oh, well, you're about to experience an insane freaking betrayal and like total backstab vibes and whatever, right? And then there's another one that it's like death or like the devil or whatever.
And the fact that you keep pulling these out
I know, it's so funny.
is tripping me out.
It's very triggering. Like,
so betrayal. I'm looking at my boyfriend, I'm going, babe.
Chemical X.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Chemical X. If you haven't subscribed already, go down below. We are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before April 18th. So keep that in mind. Make that number go up. Today, we have a very
special guest
episode.
Oh my god.
A very long time coming. We've always talked about spirituality and astrology and so many interesting things that we're interested in, but not educated enough.
No, and we definitely talk too much about it when we don't know shit.
So what we did was get an expert and welcoming Naomi.
Hi.
Welcome.
So nice to be here.
Now that you're on camera, I think it's time to ask, why is Aquarius the best sign?
Oh my god, you're asking? Literally, I'm obsessed with Aquarius.
Because of the best fucking sign.
Well, I hope you're also obsessed with Sagittarius. This podcast is gonna end real quick. But welcome. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Yes. Well, I consider myself a witch. Yeah. I got into tarot like 4 years ago, and as the more that I was studying it, the more that I was like realizing that astrology was related also. So I got really into astrology afterwards, and I'm like a huge like nerd. So I was like, I'm gonna read every book ever that I can ever possibly. And then it's sort of like I've like started like charging and having clients about a year ago, because I was really like nervous, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to like jump the gun and be like, yeah, I totally know my stuff, and I still consider myself like a newbie considered to the people I look up to, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then people are like, no, you know your shit. So I'm like,
compared to me, you're expert.
Yes.
But then also I meet people that don't even know what sign they are, and I'm like, what the fuck? So we, just before we start this amazing episode, I just want everyone to know that me and Alessia our whole life have been pronouncing tarot wrong. We started this and we said, so you do tarot reading? And she said,
no, the T is silent.
So just for all you other uneducated bitches out there, the T is fucking silent. So don't make yourself look like an idiot like us. How did you kind of get into it? Like, I know you said you just like got the interest, but like, how did you kind of make this? I guess now this is like what you do. Like,
it's my passion for sure.
Yeah,
like it's my like goal to like, I always like to call it just like become a full-time witch. Like, like this is what I do. Yeah. So I definitely have a day job still, but it's like my long-term goal.
We're manifesting for you.
Oh, good. I need all of the help I can get.
And for tarot, is there a specific ability that you need to be able to read tarot cards, or is it just something that you can kind of learn, that anybody can learn? How does that work?
Well, it's interesting because there's this like old wives like belief almost that you have to have the first tarot card like deck that you get given to you. So like you can't buy your first tarot deck yourself.
Oh my god, I think I've heard that before.
Yeah, but it's like an old school yeah, and it's an old school mentality, and I'm definitely like a type of person when it comes to like spirituality. I'm more like laid back about it. Mm-hmm. Like you do you, like it doesn't have to be like extra intense ritual, whatever. You can still have a connection with your tarot cards. So I like for the first like couple of years I'd like buy my tarot decks at Indigo and like you know what I mean, like
probably like against the rules, but
exactly. I was like, you know what, whatever, I'm here, I'm buying books anyways. So
I'm
like,
sure that like goes hand in hand though with like manifesting, because manifesting is very like you have to be laid back. You can't be like too focused on something. You kind of have to like let it go.
Yeah.
So
and I would just be like, oh, okay, you're coming home with me. But so yeah, I definitely bought my first tarot deck, and thank God I did, because no one would have given it to me. Like, like I'm the one introducing the subject to people.
You're just
you know,
waiting,
yeah, I'm just like, well, I'm a tarot reader, but I haven't got my deck yet. You know, like, but so yeah. And for the whole intuition thing, like at first, like everyone's the same, as in like they really depend on the like little booklet that comes, and like I used to really like be really obsessed at like being very stuck on what the definition of that card meant instead of sort of just going with the flow. And at one point, I just read this book where the girl was like, literally just go through your cards and just like look at the image and what do you think it is? What do you feel? And just connect to all the cards. And the second I did that, there was like this change where all of a sudden I understood that I could have a conversation with the cards, and it wasn't this like other person in this book that was telling me this is what it is. And like eventually you even start getting like your own sort of definitions of the cards. So it's really a huge test on your intuition. So I find that everyone can do it. You just really have to work on your intuition. For sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I love that.
I'm gonna go buy my first deck of cards.
Yes, you must.
She's like, no, I don't play by the rules.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So how, so that's like kind of the base of tarot. So how would you say, can you give everybody like a brief explanation of astrology? And I'm sure everybody has this kind of like already definition of what they think astrology is, and maybe like what your definition is and how that's different from the general public.
Yeah. Well, astrology for me is first and foremost like a tool for self-awareness. It's like, I'm not surprised that someone that like studied in psychology, me, then eventually got into astrology, because like I'm always obsessed with trying to understand the other person. So for me, it's like some people see it as like, oh, well, if I tell you my sign, you already know secrets about me. But like that's not how I see it. The way I see it is like, oh, let's say if I know you're a Sag, then I know how to communicate with you. I know how you think, so I want that connection faster than having to like figure it out. And like, so I feel like it just jumps another step. But like we were saying earlier before we were on air, like I find that then there's this tendency sometimes that people are like, oh, you're this one sign, we're not gonna get along. And then there's this door shut, and that's not a good, that's just, you know what I mean? Like,
well, like for you and your boyfriend, you guys are completely different signs. Like you guys are technically in the book not compatible, but you guys are very compatible. Yeah, so.
And to talk about compatibility, like it's because like if you think about, everyone knows their sun sign, right? That's when you were born, that's the sun sign. But what we call the like trinity is like your sun sign, your rising sign, and then your moon sign. So that like explains different parts of your personality, right? So your sun sign's more your like identity, like how you identify. Your moon sign is like more your emotions and how you act when you're home and like safe and secure. And your rising sign is actually most of the time like what, like your first impression, people have the first impression of you is going to be your rising sign. So when someone's like, oh, you're not compatible, they're only talking about one thing in your entire chart. You know what I mean? Then all of the other things are different signs. So, oh, maybe your moon sign is actually super compatible with this sun sign. You know what I mean? So it's hard. And I find that's why I'm like, we can't talk about compatibility without talking about the entire chart, you know, and not just this one small piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we'll get deeper into compatibility later, but I just wanted to kind of go over, because I don't even really know myself. Like, I know astrology is basically like reading the planets.
Yeah. So yeah, to get back to that question.
Like, what are the planets
have to do with
so like sarcasm?
Yeah.
Sarcasm. Why did I say it like that?
Like the planets, there's an expression in the like sort of like witchy world. It's called as above, so below. So there's at one point in time, you know, people have noticed that they were tracking the planets, and they call it the visible planets. So it's like the ones that you could see with your eyes. So it wasn't all the planets that we talk about now, like Pluto and like Neptune and stuff like that. You couldn't see them, but all of the other ones, they noticed that if they would track them in the sky, and it would sort of connect to certain events that would happen here on Earth. And so almost like the description astrology that I like is that it's not that astrology, especially when you talk about, they call it mundane astrology. So that means it's like the day-to-day astrology, because there's astrology that describes a person, but then like, for example, today it's a full moon. So that's like more of like, how does that affect us in a collective way? Okay. Some people are like, oh, but you know what? Like astrology, like does something to you. It affects us. But actually what it is, it's almost a mirror. So whatever events happens here or how you feel would still happen, but we just have a tool to sort of see it coming. So it's not the planets working against you. It's you working with the planets, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's no like, yeah, okay, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And how would you deal with people, or like what would be your response to somebody who's trying to like say that it's fake or that it's not real or that there's not like,
because I know like even me, like I'm not super into astrology. Like at times I'm like, okay, like I hear other people's signs and I'm like, okay, well that's a little bit of me too. Like they put a little bit of everybody in every single sign, so you hear it and you're like, oh my god, that's me, you know? But like,
well, especially if you like, I saw this like really great meme actually almost about this, where like horoscopes is like what people sort of like connect when they think about astrology, right? But like when, let's say I talk about astrology, I'm talking about something completely different, right? And I saw this meme where it was like an iceberg, and so the tip that was out of the water, it was like horoscopes, and then the entire huge iceberg underwater was the actual astrology. You know?
Like just quickly, what like are horoscopes real? Because I know it's so different. Like I'm talking like Sunday paper. Like,
okay, so
money is coming your way.
So
and
I'm like, still waiting.
Your lucky number this week is 12.
Well, what's interesting is that last summer I was like, you know what? I'm going to teach myself how to write astrology, because it's like a whole different type of thing. And what I realized is that we've sort of like, quote unquote, been living a lie, because the way that astrologers write astrology is according to your rising sign and not your sun sign. So when you're saying, well, that didn't feel accurate, it's because you're not even looking at the right sign.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's all about your rising sign, because that's the only way we can like, because your rising sign defines your entire chart. So we can tell where certain things are going to fall and the certain themes that can show up. That's why people are like, you're going to be focused on work today. It's because we know that it lands there.
So
but
we've been living a lie.
We've been living a lie. Like when I discovered that, I was like, why doesn't no one talk about this?
Wow.
Yeah.
What the hell?
And I feel
It's really
like
weird. Yeah.
90% of people don't know their rising sign or
No,
their moon sign.
like you have to know your like exact date of like time of birth and everything. Like
interesting. And you do chart reading for astrology.
Yeah.
And I saw that you have like different types.
Yes.
Want to explain a little bit about that?
So the first chart readings that I got into was like, I call it kind of like the basic one, where it's natal chart. So the natal chart, basically, a quick way to explain it is like, let's say you took like a snapshot of the sky when you were born, exactly the time you were born. We can recreate that, and it looks sort of just like a circle, and then it looks like a pie with like 12 little pieces of the pies, and we call them houses. So not only do you have a multitude of signs within your chart, so you're not only an Aquarius or you're not only this, but wherever it falls in your chart also sort of tells me if it's going to manifest more in your love life or in your personal career life or whatever. So it's just a way to, so natal charts, it's a way to like explain to you and validate the feelings you've already felt. Like it's rare that like I get feedback from a client that they were saying like, I've never thought of what you said.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, but the whole point is sort of to bring that person home to who they are, really. Right, you know what I mean? And sort of like, and I find that there's certain like negative traits, let's say, of certain signs that like people are like, oh, why are you like this? And the person is like, maybe I should change, you know? But then to get that validation through a natal chart of being like, no, there's a reason why you're like this. Right. You know what I mean? This is a blessing. People can see it as a bad thing, but you know that you're, you know, let's say you're Virgo, oh, you're so analytical, whatever. But well, there's a reason we need those type of people, right, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's a natal chart. So that's a lot of like people who like get into astrology, get into that. Then I started offering what they're called like transit charts. So that's a little bit more complicated, but it's like basically I take your natal chart, and then I take, so let's say that's your snapshot of your life, right? Then I take a snapshot of the stars right now, what they're doing at this very moment. Okay. And I sort of like interpose them together. Okay. And I see what planets are talking to each other and therefore influencing each other. And then that sort of translate into like events happening in your personal life.
Like it's right now.
Right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's crazy because when I got into transit reading and stuff, the cool thing about it is that you can backtrack, right? So like, let's say they're like, oh, this type of thing, this event usually happens. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see when that happened in my life, because you can sort of like be the detective.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, it happened in like 2012. So I go and I remember much of my life. Like I'm very like into like just remembering all this shit. And it was like always so spot on. It was really freaky.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really freaky. I was like,
so I think that goes back to how you're saying the planets work with us.
yes, it would have happened. Like, it's not as if I was into astrology back then. It still happened, you know what I mean? But like, maybe if I would have gotten a heads up, I would have like lived through it a little bit easier, knowing, okay, it's gonna end. It's not like the end of the world or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then the one that I just started offering is actually my favorite one. But I still find it's like a really different branch. So that all of what I just talked about, I would describe it as like psychological sort of like astrology, like how you think, how you whatever interact with people, whatever. And the one that I started getting into, it's called evolutionary astrology, and so that's like more past lives thing. So that's where the past lives get in.
Love that. I love a good past life.
Yeah.
Until they tell me you're a new soul, and then I'm like, boring.
You're like, what?
Never mind.
Yeah. And so there's like a million ways to read a chart, basically, you know? So if I look it through the eyes of a natal chart, I'll see this. But if I look through it in the way of like, basically the gist of evolutionary astrology is they say like your soul came here, chose that chart for a specific reason, for you to evolve through whatever challenges, or you had to learn through being this one sign, you know, or through this or whatever. And I can see, it's wild. I love it because I can see patterns that you came here because of your past life, like whatever happened in your past life, you kind of brought.
Freaky.
It's super interesting.
How would you calculate?
It's wild. Like
she's like, well, do you have 2 years? For me?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, and the feedback I started like a couple months ago, and the feedback I'm getting is like spot on. Like people are like, it's freaky how like accurate this is, because like when you read a natal chart, it's like I said, it's like things that you sort of already know about yourself. But the things I tap into when I do the other reading, it's like things that it's like you have a harder time putting your finger on, because I'm talking about like patterns that are like, you know, recurring in your life where you're like, why does this always happen to me? Or I always tend to like fall for the same type of guys or whatever.
Right.
That's all connected.
Interesting.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That's my favorite
so
one.
Cool.
Oh my god. So I went to see a mediator once. I only did it once in my entire life. And when I went, I was like, honestly, I was really nervous about doing it, because like there's always like two types of people who are like, well, just let your like life unfold the way it's supposed to. And then there's ones like people who are like, well, I go every month, like I need answers, you know? And I'm like, oh my god, like should I do it?
Yeah.
And I did it, and to be honest, like I was like really scared, because I was like, do I want to know something and then make a decision off of it? So like, let's say I was going in there and I had just recently started dating my boyfriend, and I was scared she was going to be like, well, you're going to last 2 years or so forth. And that's exactly what she said. So it was like, I'm not going to lie. I like lived my life going, oh my God. So like, okay, so
well, 4 days left.
I'll, you know what I mean? So can you speak a little bit about like how to take things like with a grain of salt kind of thing?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that one, because there's a lot of like, as much as I believe in mediums, I like believe in this type of work, I also believe that there's a lot of fakes out there. So you really have to like either just go with recommendations or just really go with your intuition of like, okay, I trust this person, because there's a lot of like they're just not doing. And even like,
or it's like when I'll be at the media, she'll be saying something about somebody and she won't be like completely direct, like specific, like, oh, it's your boyfriend, or like something's gonna last 2 years. So like I automatically put the association to like, okay, well, obviously she's talking about my boyfriend, or with anything in life. So yeah, that's where it gets a little like
like even for tarot, I find that like, so to go back into sort of like the metaphysical kind of answers to this, like the way that mediums work and the way tarot works also, not as much astrology. Astrology is a lot more like calculated and scientific in my opinion. Tarot is just like out there, you know, but it says that like what I believe is that when we're trying to sort of like predict or something for you, what we're seeing is who you are now and the possibility of what's gonna happen. So it's not like a definite this is gonna happen,
right?
Because then you can ultimately make another choice that will lead you to another way. So that's where you have to be careful with really taking in what that person says. Right. And there's a huge ethics about the entire thing too, like of you're like working with someone's life here, right. You know what I mean? So it's like, so sometimes it's true. You're like, this person told me this and it never happened. Well, it might just be because you just chose something else. You know what I mean?
Or you believed it so much you created it.
Yeah.
Also. Yeah.
And is that also like applicable to like tarot readings?
For
like,
sure.
Taking everything, like when you like do a reading, do you say like, oh, this card means this? Like, I don't actually know. Yeah. Like, I've never done a tarot reading, so I don't really know what it is. So, like, do you use specific people? Do you say, like, this is this? Or it's general and people can kind of read it how they feel fit?
Or they, like, pull out a card and then they go, oh, my God, and they kind of, like, talk to you about it. So then you work with kind of, like, the story that they're saying.
I'm an interesting person to ask this because I do readings very differently than other people. Like, I don't sit with you and do readings because it fucks with my energy. Like it's
I'm
really,
like, where is she in the other room?
It's like
she goes with the microphone, grab the card, and I'm like, where is she?
I do pre-recorded videos.
Okay.
So I do it on my own. So you're not there, and somehow it's still accurate.
Oh.
So you tell me this is what I want. This is what I want you to focus on, and I just like do it on my own. Because I channel better that way. So I'm like, do you want an accurate reading or do you want, you know what I mean?
God, okay.
Yeah. So I don't get feedback until a day or two later. So it's interesting. So when I'm doing the reading, I'm just sort of going with what I see. And sometimes I add a little bit more of like, this is probably your relationships or whatever. I'll add a little, but I'm not a fan of like putting answers into the person's mouth almost of being like, this is definitely this, because there's like, I've heard bad stories of people, you know, it doesn't mean that you have a tarot deck and you've, you know, studied or whatever, that you're a good tarot reader. You know what I mean? Like there's people like, for example, the death card or this one, like
oh my God.
Okay, like you could see this come out.
This one, the first one she pulls out,
death.
Do you want to show the camera the card just so that they can see kind of what it is?
So this guy, which is one of the most, it's funny that it came out like just for the
I
exactly. No, it was perfect.
Funny.
It was like the perfect example. Okay, so this card comes out. Okay, and like a reader that doesn't necessarily understand the what's it called, like the subtleties of this card, right? It's just gonna be like, oh well, you're about to experience an insane freaking betrayal and like total backstab vibes and whatever, right? And then there's another one that it's like death or like the devil or whatever.
And the fact that you keep pulling these out
I know, it's so funny.
is tripping me out.
It's very triggering. Like
so betrayal. Like, I'm looking at my boyfriend, I'm going, babe,
but
you can tell me.
But for me, when I see this card, I don't see it that way. So it really comes with like the reader you have too. Like I see it as betrayal, but it's not upcoming betrayal. It's something that already happened to you and you're working through literally taking those swords out of your body. You know what I mean? It's past betrayal that you're still working through. You still have the wounding of it. So it's not like, all right, well, brace yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and
it's
I was
like,
gonna ask you. I was gonna ask you because when I went to see my mediator or whatever, I was like... Medium. I was like medium. Like, why am I even here, guys? Medium, I was like, if there's like a death in my family or anything and she knows it, is she gonna tell me? Is she gonna focus on just like my love life, my future job?
Yeah.
Like, that was always the... Like...
How does it work with like negative?
Yeah.
Like, but that also
or
comes
it's like
back
you said,
to like
it depends the person.
it depends on the person, but also I find that like there's a lot of ethics involved. Like you don't like, just for example, like I'll come back to this, but like if let's say you tell me like, oh, I want you to look at my friend's chart, I need consent from that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I can't just like pull up the chart and be like, this is this, because it's literally their like inner world, you know? So there's consent through that. And like it's really up to the reader or the medium to think, is this information going to be beneficial to the reader, to you, not the reader, but to you, or is it actually going to affect them negatively? Then there's certain things that I wouldn't say, because if it's ultimately going to happen, maybe you don't really need that heads up. You know what I mean? Like, and what if it doesn't happen?
Yeah.
And then you're literally always on edge.
Traumatized.
Like I said, like there's one that's the death card. I can't see it. I can't find it. But
well, I'm glad it's not coming out.
My friend was like, oh, I just got a reading, and the girl, like the death card came out, and she literally said that like I was probably gonna die. And I was like, who is this person? I need their information.
Oh
that is the
God.
worst thing you can tell to someone. Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me?
I would never leave my house.
I hate to break it to you, but time's
Like,
up. Like,
Time's ticking.
way to
so-
take that so literally when it's actually a
Yeah.
card about like transformation and like rebirth and shit, you know?
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you.
Yeah.
Next is, what is the death
Yeah,
card?
the death card is actually sort of like a beautiful card, quote unquote. It is a hard card to process through because there is a death of something. But it never, honestly, like 99% of the time, it doesn't actually relate to an actual death. It's a death of like a piece of you or a cycle that you're on that's ending. But through death comes transformation, comes rebirth, right? So it's like, that's what you need to talk to the person about, not that you're gonna die. Like why would I was like shocked when she told me that. Yeah.
Oh my
Shocked.
God.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever have to like, did you ever do a reading where like there was like a lot of like negative and you have to like, and how do you deal with like telling somebody negative things? Because if somebody's like, let's say I would come to you and be like, oh, my relationship is struggling, like what do I do? And you're like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, you need to end it. Like that's really heavy.
Yeah. So I mean, this is probably could be answered a million ways, but the way that I'm a Leo. So I like to just coddle everyone and be like, you are loved and like everything's going to be fine.
Right.
So the way that when cards like that, really heavy cards come out, I do acknowledge them. And I do acknowledge that it's definitely something that you're going to be processing. But I like to also like focus on almost the quote unquote positive of that scenario. Because there's always a reason why you're getting through this. Or I try to like pull more cards to see, okay, where's the outcome of this? You know, because this can't just be it. You know what I mean? Like if this is what you're processing, then where's the outcome? What's happening later? So I always try to like, I'm a big fan of like dealing with the shadow work, which is like the shitty nitty gritty parts of life, right? Trauma, whatever you have, let's talk about it. But I always try to end it with like a positive note, you know, of like, okay, now go off and be free. Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
So actually, like I wanted to touch on people that start using, well, like you were saying, like astrology and tarot reading can be used to like come through tough decisions or have guidance. So I think like just to relate this back, my dad growing up was super into astrology, super into also like psychic readings and stuff like that.
Really? What's his sign?
He's a Taurus.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he always growing up, he would be like, okay, he would like do my birth charts.
Really?
Like, yeah, he was really into that. But
Oh my
I mean,
God.
at the time I was young, I didn't really know. He would just be like, what time were you born at? What hospital? What, you know, well, obviously
That's
he
so
knew, but like, he'd
fu-
be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what's your birthday again? He used to,
Oh.
somebody who's into astrology could never remember my birthday.
Yeah,
Her
that's
father-
hilarious.
her father,
They're
what's your birthday again?
Every year he messages me the day after and I say, Dad, You love astrology. You should know this. Anyways, so the point of that story is there was a time, like a tough time in his life where he was like really leaning on astrology and readings to like make any decision in his life. Like I remember my mom used to tell me like he was like crazy, like anything that would happen, he had to go see the psychic so that she would tell him what to do. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound very positive.
Yeah, and that's why they're divorced.
Yeah. So
For sure.
I would be curious to know your thoughts on people that like abuse it and use it in a negative way.
Yeah. And like, what's a good amount of times you should go see a card reading a year? I mean, I don't even know if there's like a stamp.
Yeah, but it's just like, how do you use it for good? How do you use it to better yourself rather than let it lead your life?
Because I've noticed that at the beginning.
Fucking scary.
Yeah, like I've noticed at the beginning, I had a tendency to lean on it too and like obsessively look at what was happening today in the stars and how it could be affecting me, and I find that people fall in that pattern when they're very confused about their own life, right? So they're like, someone must have an answer for me, and they're looking for an outside answer when actually ultimately it's with them, you know? So it's once again coming back to your intuition, but like there's a healthy process of sometimes, like, I know astrologers that like look at the chart like constantly. I'm not like that. I sort of like, I always have a very good general like idea of what's going on in the stars right now, like definitely when the moon's out, whatever, what signs, that's good. But like I like to sort of give it some breathing like time also, because I do find that then it's almost like you get a little too obsessed, and then you it's when we talk about like manifesting
yeah.
I can never say that word. It's so weird.
She was unsure about a word.
Yeah, I always get the weirdest
Even.
words. Yeah. It's like you're creating your own sort of like weird anxious reality of like the outcome of maybe this, and like leaning on someone, and like it's sometimes you literally just have to let go. And even as people that have that sort of spiritual practice, sometimes I don't touch my deck for like 2 weeks, and that's okay, because like you also have to just fucking live your life, you know? Like
And like you said, like every decision can change the course. So if you're always running on the decisions of the cards, on the decisions of the stars, then you're going to be like literally just
because
running yourself into everything.
Because like we said, like if it's gonna happen anyway, maybe I don't need to know every single detail of what's gonna happen during that day, you know? Like maybe just let the universe talk to me in a different way, you know?
Yeah,
like,
that's super interesting. I think it's really important for people to know that, because I think whether it be astrology, whether it be readings, people are so like, oh, they said this, so this is going to happen, and now I need to know, like, and people take it too much, like, where they don't also realize that you need to live your life for these things to happen. Well, you know what I mean? Like, it's
interesting that, like I'm like on Instagram, like most of the people I follow in that community, it's all like spiritual shit, right? And there's this huge thing that's been happening, especially now with the pandemic. People are very insecure about what's happening or like where to find their answers. And there's this weird like cult like rising. So yeah, it's really weird. It's like people are so desperate for like a black and white answer that then these like what's the word, I want to say, I don't have it, but it's like these charlatans, you know, like they like take over and they have that charisma of being like, this is the answer, and that's how you start a cult. So there's a lot of like weird shit that is happening in the spiritual community where people are like, please tell me the answer of this, and this person is like, of course I have this, you know what I mean, when actually you have to, the whole point of that spiritual journey and being a spiritual teacher, let's say, is to teach others how to find it themselves. That's the whole point of it. So it's really bizarre to like observe it. Like it's
wow.
Oh my god.
And I think like an interesting thing that I've just from this conversation from life, I think it's not really like the answer, it's more understanding. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like people constantly like they're seeking answers, but really what you're giving them is like an understanding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're never saying this is black and white what it is. It's always like, this is, you need to understand yourself. You need to understand your relationship. You need to understand why this happened and how it relates. So I think
I also understand people
tools.
Who go
but also yes or no. Do I quit my job?
Do I quit my job?
What's like the craziest, like, what's the most common thing that people come to you for help?
For tarot, the most common is career and love life. Okay. But I'm very picky when it comes to love readings, because I find that the people who do come for love readings already know what they want to hear. Right. You know what I mean? So I sort of do a little trickaroo with them where I'm like, yeah, okay, let's come to, and especially if they're single, like say, I'm going to be like, okay, it's a love reading, but the first thing we need to focus on is you, so let's talk about what you have to work on to eventually find the person you want,
Wow.
So I like switch that around a little, I'm like,
we always talk about the fact that you'll never find who you're supposed to be with until you're like super comfortable in who you are.
For sure.
Like,
yeah.
Wow. Do you ever have like people come and do a love reading as a couple?
No. And I don't think I would. I don't think I would.
That seems crazy.
Yeah. What happens when you say
do that?
I hate to break it to you, but you guys are not for each other.
But like even in astrology, there's this like branch that's called like synastry. It's called, and that's like the compatibility of. But like that's not where like I know of it, but that's not where my like interest leans. You know.
Interesting. Yeah. So would you say that? So you don't do like compatibility? And
I don't do compatibility, but I know of it. Like I can give you a little quick like rundown of it.
Ooh.
You know.
You're like,
tell me more.
Well, it just starts with like basically. The reason people say that, like, what can I say? Like, a Virgo and a Leo aren't that compatible, let's say, is because what they're basing it on is the element of their sign. So there's 4 elements. There's air, there's earth, there's fire, and water. So there's 3 signs each. So, like, let's say Leo, Sag, and Aries are all fire.
We're fire in this room right now. Like.
Then like Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini are air. Earth is Virgo, Taurus, and Capricorn, and then I'm missing the waters, so Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So water works well with Earth. Okay, so that little group are going to be compatible, or sometimes, let's say, the same element can be compatible, but what I find more interesting is when it's a different element that's compatible, you know? And then air and fire work well together. It's kind of, because it's like air and fire signs are much more lively and like talkative and social and like higher energy, you know what I mean? Like, and earth signs and water signs are a lot more, let's say, like emotional and like almost like the introverts of the like zodiac. And then the earth signs are just very grounded and like down to earth and like less, not that they don't have emotions, but they don't project, they don't like emote, you know what I mean? As much as like, let's say, like just me talking with my hands right now, that's a very fire thing to do, and like, you know, it's just like lively and whatever. So and that's where it comes real from.
Life too, like fire, like if
you
put water on fire, the fire's gonna go down.
Exactly.
So, like they don't
so that's kind of the root of where people talk about compatibility. But then I find that it goes too far, and I find that like Gen Zs, let's say, are super into astrology, right? And like I'm big on, not me as I'm big on TikTok, but I'm like, I love being on TikTok, and I've been noticing like that a lot of them are defining themselves a lot more with what their signs are than like other generations. And I find that, I know that it's like jokey and it's like what were we talking about, like pop astrology, where it's just like whatever, it's funny to talk about like the stereotypes of one sign, but I find that they're almost like kind of closing doors a little, of being like, oh well, we're not compatible, so therefore we're definitely not gonna work, you know?
Or like if you're a Scorpio,
exactly away. And I'm always like, Scorpios, man, they're really cool. Like,
do you want to talk a little bit about what pop astrology. I don't think we explained it on camera.
So, like, pop astrology, so astrology is sort of what we've already discussed. So that's like the deeper issues of astrology where it's like the charts and the whatever, and it's like the whole image of it. And pop astrology is more like the horoscopes, and it's the like meme accounts of astrology where they talk more about the stereotypes of it, and it, unfortunately, I mean, don't get me wrong, I follow all of them, but like,
she's like meme accounts. Like, I'm like, yeah, Sagittarius.
yeah, exactly. Like, I do the same thing, but like the negative thing about it, I find, is that the stereotypes of one sign are usually the negative traits of a sign. So and there's almost like a fatalistic feeling of like, oh, well, I'm a Leo, so I'm always going to be dramatic. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, well, no, that's when you feel like you're not getting the attention you want.
Guys, as you know, we have our lovely sponsor, Neonific, and you can get 10% off right now if you use the code ChemicalX. And you also get
free shipping. Who doesn't like free shipping?
So get that custom sign, head to their website. The link is down below.
Before then you become dramatic. Like, there's always a reason behind it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's sort of I call it like the like low energy of the sign and then the high energy of the sign, you know? So like it's like, oh yeah, well, Geminis, they're all fickle, you know what I mean? You're like, well, like, that's not exactly what it means, but you know, that's the pop astrology, you know? It's like
and
what
that's
people
where all, like,
kind
the
of
negative stereotypes come from.
And then it gets really set in that, like, people are like, oh, well, I must, so therefore I'm not going to change.
Right.
Well, no.
And do you know why, like, there's a huge stereotype with, like, for, say, like, Scorpio?
I mean, I'm so Papa John. I'm the worst. I'm like, Scorpio, stay the fuck away.
I have a theory on this because I find it really interesting that, like, I love Scorpios. Like, all of my, like, close friends, even before I got into astrology, then I got into it and I realized all of them have this some kind of Scorpio in them. So clearly I, like, attract that, right? And that's one of my beliefs, is that you attract the signs that you're sort of, like, meant to work with.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it is just compatibility, but sometimes they, like, show you something of you that you should be working on, kind of thing. And Scorpios, I think why people find them so intense or whatever is because they show you, they're literally the sign that is associated to death, transformation, and, like, all the, like, taboo type of, like, the occult, all of the things that people sort of rather not talk about. So Scorpios are here to make us uncomfortable and talk about those intense conversations. And I love that shit.
They like to talk about it.
Two-faced. Manipulative.
So there's like
liars.
I call like Scorpios, like, they have like this like weird evil radar. They see right through you. If you're lying to them, they'll know, and then that's when you get fucking hit by the, like, zinger. You know what I mean? So the good side of Scorpio, but then there's the bad side, you know, like, don't fuck with them, basically.
Absolutely. Would you say, like, they're the sign with the most misconceptions?
Yeah, and Gemini.
Gemini too.
Geminis,
well, you know what?
and,
I do feel like Gemini's only, like, thing is that they're two-faced, but a lot of other traits of Gemini are really good.
Like, it's always like,
Geminis.
oh, Gemini is like, you know, they're just like, they suck at relationships, and they're like, they can't, like, make up a decision. Or Libra is a little bit like that too. Like, oh, you can't make a decision, or like, you're just, but what I'm hearing, it's like Scorpio and Geminis are just the like,
ones who get
what
bullied.
about Aquarius?
Aquarius?
Love.
I find that not a lot of people have a hate on Aquarius.
It's because we're the best.
You guys are just like,
You guys are just so chill.
I saw a meme once that was like, Aquarius is like the quirky aunt at the family gathering. And I was like, it's facts.
Exactly.
Like, it's always like the one who believes in aliens or something. You know what I mean? Like,
But speaking of aliens, like, to come back to compatibility, I find that, like, so I don't know if you know this concept, but, like, every sign has an opposite sign, okay? And it's going to be in a different element, but a compatible element. So let's say Leo and Aquarius are opposite signs. So we sort of share a few similar traits, but in a very weird opposite way. And then it's like we're supposed to, like, meet in the middle and sort of, like, work on finding the balance between those two extremes. So let's say Leos are very into wanting the attention and being validated, versus, like, Aquarius get the attention, but they're not necessarily looking for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very detached sort of way. It's not sort of ego driven in the way that Leos do it. And so my husband's an Aquarius, so we're fully opposites, you know? Wow. And it's like just really interesting. So like he just goes around not giving a fuck. And I'm like, I give so much fucks, you know? So like I try to like learn from him and he learns from me. It's a really cool like
that's super interesting. Like so the opposites attract.
Yeah. Like literally.
Opposite attracts.
Oh my god, attracts.
I don't know, guys.
I don't know how to say attracts.
We can't speak English.
Yeah, just to like last about compatibility. I know you said it's like not really like your expertise, but I wanted to talk about like how much to like for example, even in like my compatibility, it's like Cancer is your worst match, and I've always been like, oh, I get so like I don't get along with Cancers, blah blah. But I've dated 2 Cancers, and my boyfriend right now is a Cancer.
Interesting.
And one of my best friends is a Cancer. I have a lot of people around me in my life that are Cancers, but I'm so like allergic to emotions, and Cancers are so much. So it's like,
but that's what like it comes back to what I was saying. Like if you're attracting that type of energy, it means that they're teaching you to like to connect with your emotions and actually communicate those emotions, because Sag have a tendency to be like, nothing's wrong, let's just have some fun, you know, like let's go on an adventure, you know,
we
like,
need to talk about it.
And Cancer's like, can we just like snuggle and like talk about like the real shit, you know, like put our sweatpants on and like.
My moon sign is actually Cancer though.
Oh my god, I was gonna ask you because I was like, you probably have some Cancer. I have my moon's in Cancer too, so that's where it is. Like,
I'm allergic. When I heard my moon sign was Cancer, I was like,
that's so
must
interesting.
be a mistake.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I find that shit fascinating.
But I want to just talk a little bit about how it's not like my whole life I've been like, oh, Cancer, but then like I'm in love with a Cancer. So I want to talk a bit about people who are like so like you were saying pop astrology. So like this person but do you feel like any relationship can work, and why maybe people avoid the ones where they're not compatible?
Like my best friend is like that, I find, where she was into astrology even before I was, and she's very much like that. She always like literally the second she starts dating someone, she like sends me their like info. She's like, but she, wow, she's
I need a friend like that.
He has like Capricorn in him. Oh, I can't date him, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Megan, but like,
bitch.
Yeah. So for me, I'm like I understand why you would be a little bit more, because there's like truth to it, right? Yeah. Like there are signs that I notice that I just don't click with, you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that like, and like we said before, like there's such a, like your entire chart is like, technically, okay, let's go for this. Technically, everyone has the 12 signs in their chart. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So somewhere, somehow in you have that inner Gemini, inner Capricorn, inner whatever. But it doesn't manifest because let's say there's not a planet in that sign, but it still exists in your chart, right? So it's still like maybe you don't connect in the way that you don't like, you know, jive and like, you know, the conversation doesn't flow as much or whatever, but I don't think that you should close the door, especially if you're meeting this person. There's a reason why you're meeting that person. I'm all about synchronicity and shit like that, you know? So if this person was like entered your life, there must be a reason why you're attracting that energy, like we were saying. So like I would never close a door because we're not compatible. Yeah, it's once again, it comes to that whole like, okay, astrology can't rule your entire life. Like you're gonna be the one that's gonna decide if you're compatible or not, you know what I mean? Like,
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I have a question that's like, I just remembered. Do you or have you heard or do you believe in the 13th sign? Because it's
don't believe it.
What's the 13th sign?
I don't believe it.
So there's a 13th sign.
It's not true.
Okay.
It's not true. And it's interestingly, it's always NASA that comes out with this like information. And I think it's their way to try to debunk astrology.
Yeah. To try and be like,
and it's every like couple years they do it, and everyone's like, what, there's this new sign, and it's always like it's the weird name too, like it's not Leo or and you're like, I think I would be that sign too, actually.
Yeah, I'm I'm the Ophiuchus. It's the beginning of December, end of November, beginning of December.
Oh,
so
really?
it goes
Okay.
in between Scorpio and Sagittarius.
And
I was like,
no.
Oh, there's a 30 sign, but I was like, oh, it's me. But then I'm like, it's fake. And then I was like, and then I read the traits. I was like, I don't like this. I'm
Because
Sagittarius.
basically they're saying, oh, well, it's a constellation, like constellation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so obviously, like, why don't you include it? And like, okay, yeah, it exists in the stars, but what astrology is like based on is this very like set thing. So when we say, like, let's say the sun is in Aries right now, so we're in Aries season, it's because it's in that space of the sky that the constellation is. But we're not just going to start popping into other, you know what I mean? It's a set thing. Like, it doesn't, there's a huge technical thing, and like someone would describe it a lot better for me, but like I know that it's just a way to try to debunk that, well, if we find another set of stars, therefore this is like illegitimate.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Okay, so this might be a little weird, but like sometimes I feel like when something happens, it's like it's happened before, but it hasn't actually.
Like a déjà vu?
If that makes sense. Like a déjà vu, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know anything about
Yeah.
that? Like, is that like part of my past life?
Okay,
Like,
so
Let's get into past lives.
oh
So,
my
like,
god.
it's funny, someone asked me that the other day, and I was like, well, do you want the like full metaphysical like answer of this?
Just the basics.
So
Put
like
it in foolproof.
so okay.
Like,
The
I'm
way
not
that
like crazy that sometimes I'm
No,
like something
yeah.
happens and I'm like, but why do I feel like that's happened before? And everyone's like, it's never happened. And I'm
Yeah.
like, freaky, weird.
Yeah.
Should I buy my tarot cards now? Tarot cards.
Like, one of my like, and so this is a thing about me where I read all of the things, but it doesn't mean that I believe in all of the things that I read, right? I'm just interested in seeing every person's sort of like opinion on something, and then I'll make my own. So when I say certain theories, I'm like, I'm still working on if I truly believe them. And ultimately, we'll never know, you know,
Right.
which is fascinating. Even with past lives, it's like, okay, it is my fascination, but how can I prove that it's real until we're out of here, you know?
Yeah, and then you're like, I knew
You know,
it.
I fucking knew. But yeah, so there's this one theory that I find really interesting is that, and it comes to play with the whole like fate, like if everything is like already destined and if we have free will type of thing, which I believe we have both. You know, it's a mix of
weird because
both.
sometimes I feel like everyone's like, well, you know, you make your own decisions. And I'm like, sometimes I feel like I'm like, are we making your decisions?
Yeah.
Because like people say like everything happens for a reason. So it's like,
Yeah.
am I choosing the path
Yeah.
or is the path already technically chosen and
There.
I feel like I'm choosing it?
I was having this conversation literally yesterday where it was like, we were like, because it's a debate point because no one really
Yeah.
knows. And like, sometimes we're like, okay, so what if it is all already planned?
Yeah.
But as a
That scares the
human,
fuck
you
out of me.
experience as free choice anyways. So
Right.
it doesn't technically mean free choice doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyways, to go back to the whole like déjà vu, it's like there's this theory where before you're born, it's like your soul sees this like almost like blueprint of your life.
Of my life.
And it's like, this is what should work. Like, this is what I should be following. You know, when they say like, you're on the right path type of thing, like that's sort of what they're talking about. So it's like, you already have that imprint of that sort of like blueprint. And when you get that type of like, why do I feel like I've experienced this before? The theory is that you're realigning to where you're supposed to be heading. So I always take it as like, you're doing good. Like,
Wow.
Interesting.
You're on the right path,
you're
sweetie.
you're
Keep
literally
going.
on the
You
right
got
path.
this.
Pat on the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. So
I
my
find
life's
it.
going in the right direction. Yesterday, so.
Do you like, how would you relate? Because I know you were saying you were like, for you, like astrology is very like almost scientific.
Yeah.
So would you say that you're a spiritual person?
Yeah.
I know you said you're a witch. I don't know
Yeah.
how, I don't want to sound stupid, but I don't know how all these things relate. Like I
Yeah.
classify myself as a spiritual person, but sometimes I feel like there's,
Yeah, there's interlapping. Like, I know astrologers that aren't witches, and I know tarot readers that are not into astrology. I just happen to like all of it, but like the whole witch thing, it's sort of like I went into it like that. Like, I've always been a spiritual person. Like, my family's always been very open. We sort of always talked about past lives, like, weirdly enough. And there's always like spiritual books in my house. And then I got through like I went into this like super intense hard period when I was like 26, 27. And I think it was like one of those moments where I really needed this like outside perspective of like, why the is everything happening to me? You know what I mean? Like, there must be a reason for these things, you know?
We need answers.
Yeah. And so I used to like always get into spirituality when I was feeling shitty, you know? But then I would sort of let it go. And then I would feel shitty again and sort of like dive into it again. And
Which makes sense. I get that.
You know?
I always want answers when I
exactly.
Like, you know, I'm feeling like shit.
Yeah.
And then somehow I was like, it clicked one day where I was like, this should be like a daily thing. Like, this should be like a practice where I like just, you know, communicate, quote unquote, with that part of me. And then that's when everything sort of like opened. That was like about 4 years ago when I got into tarot, and I sort of started identifying with the whole witch thing where like, and I know it's like a fad now, like everyone calls themselves a witch, you know? So it's like I don't want to gatekeep, but sometimes I'm like, chill out, you know? Like, you're not technically, like, what do you do? Like
I'm a witch.
You know what I mean? Like, just because you're like, I'm really into crystals, and you're like, but did you do the work? There's like this weird, like, there's spiritual work involved in like calling yourself a witch.
Yes.
And then for astrology, like, I find it's the most quote unquote intellectual thing I do, because tarot is like a fully, like, you have to trust your intuition. Like, yes, you need to know the cards, but like there's this very mysterious thing that happens within those like moments of reading the cards, versus for me, astrology, it's, you literally have to just study it.
Yeah.
It's facts that I know. So it's like when I read a chart, not so, more or less like the past life ones, because that I play with my intuition a little bit more. But like natal charts, it's like,
this is
like
fact.
People feel like it's magic when they receive it. Like, whoa, like, where did that come from? But I'm like literally just opening a file in my brain and telling you. So for me, that's the most intellectual sort of spiritual side of the things that I do. But
interesting.
I enjoy sort of like going to
mixing.
I read everything basically.
So
like,
then you would say like tarot is mostly based off spirituality?
Yeah, like,
is that what it
like
technically is?
For me like, yeah, I don't think I've ever met someone that calls themselves a tarot reader that wasn't like spiritual.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's a lot of like astrologers that I know that are just very intellectual, and they just take it very seriously, and doesn't really have to do with spirituality at all, you know? Which I find really fascinating, because I'm like, really? Like, because I take all of it and like mix it together. But, and like tarot, like I said, like I do like giving readings, but for me it's like a personal practice. Like, I do it on my own, like, and like it's not the thing that I share the most, let's say on Instagram. I like to keep things, I'm so open and so out there. There's certain things that I like to keep to myself, because at first I was just like, here's everything, you know, like, but now I'm like, so like even my like
a little more reserved,
you know, my like witchcraft sort of like rituals and little things, I like keep it for myself, you know.
I remember when I was a kid, I got really into like Wiccan and like being a witch and like spells and stuff. And I remember being like 13 and I had this book on like how to be a witch. And I was in my living room with like candles all around me, and I was like doing something. My mom came in and she was like, what are you doing? And then she got so mad at me. She's like, we're Christian. You can't bring this into this house. And I was like, but Mom, if you don't believe it, then why are you so scared? You know, like,
for sure.
But that's my experience with witchery.
It took forever for me to get into it, because I remember, like, I don't know why it stuck with me for so long, but like I remember one time when I was young, like I expressed like interest in like witchcraft or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember my mom saying something like, oh, there's already bad things happening, like, in our life. We don't need an extra one. And so I immediately associated, like, any type of, like, witch practice to, like, evil shit. Yeah, you know, like, bad things are you're fucking with the wrong shit, you know? and which is like the opposite of it. Like it's so like lovely and
Question
like,
for
you know, like,
do you believe in the Ouija board?
Yeah, but I don't fuck with it. I don't like.
So you believe?
Because I believe in like spirits and stuff.
Right.
But I don't like to like. I don't like to
mess with
things that like you don't have to mess with. Like, but
I'm glad I have
like,
some. She's acknowledging I accidentally haunted my house.
Oh yeah, like.
So I'm glad you're like.
Yeah.
Telling
like
me
I
that
take
it's
this
true.
thing really seriously when it comes to like, especially like spirits and stuff. I'm like, you don't
Okay,
know.
question for you. I was curious to know, because I kind of feel like I have a really good intuition about people, about myself. Like, so do you think intuition could be something that you're either kind of born with, or can you work on having a better intuition?
Yeah,
I guess.
And can you get to the point where you're almost like gifted? Or do you
that
have to
was
be born
actually how I
gifted?
wanted to, word it.
Okay. I do believe that some people are born gifted, like just full on, like they were just literally put on earth to do this. Like, what's his name? Like Tyler something. Like he's like medium for the stars or whatever. When I see him, when I see him read, I'm like, okay, you were just literally put on earth to do that. Okay. Yeah. So there's those type of people. Yeah. But like for like us common folks, I was just talking about this because I've always felt like I was someone that had intuition, but I didn't trust it at all of my 20s. Like I'm 32 now. Like all of my 20s, I was like sort of just completely disregarding it or like not trusting it. And I think it was just coming from a place of like being just effed up, like just like what's going on with my life. And so if you're already in this like weird shambles state, you're not gonna trust this like very subtle thing that's happening in your body, because most of the time you don't trust what you're thinking anyways, or you don't trust or people are just completely dissociated from their body, which is where the intuition lies, you know? So it's that hard work of having to deal with those things before really working with the intuition. So I felt like mine has just went up, like skyrocketed. Like
the more you focus
the
on
more
yourself.
the more I worked on all the girl shit, the more then I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And it's putting boundaries. And like I was very like a person that was very like, it's like I didn't know like that I could make a decision myself. So I was always asking like, so what do you think about this? What do you think? So that's already an indication that I don't trust what's happening inside, you know? So I had to like really recalibrate that completely and be like, no, okay.
That's interesting because basically the people that come to you are the people that don't trust their own intuition.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So me.
I guess I am not as intuitive as I thought.
But what would you say would be like the first step or some advice you can give on working on yourself
especially since you studied in psychology.
Through psychology, through astrology, through tarot reading, spirituality, whatever like you connect better with that. What can you kind of give to everybody that they can like think about and take home and
like to start working on themselves, to
work
like,
on yourself,
you know?
Like people are here probably listening to this because they are seeking, they're like us, like we said, they want to trust their intuition more. So what's the first step?
Okay, so it's going to sound a little strange what I'm going to say probably, but at first you have to sort of like rearrange the things you're consuming, first of all. I find that like when I started like healing and trying to like get my shit together and whatever, like I had to like rearrange, let's say even my Instagram feed, where like just first of all start following people that you feel inspired and that they're maybe just ahead of you in the thing that you want and the way that you want to feel, so you have something like of a guiding light. You know what I mean? Good, yeah. So that in itself first, I find that totally changes it, because it changes, like we're always on our phones, let's admit it, you know what I mean? So the things you consume definitely makes you, so if you're constantly maybe like comparing yourself or feeling jealous when you're on Instagram, that already there, that's like, and then like it's the fact of like you have to admit to yourself first that there's changes to be made, because I know a lot of people that are like, oh, I know I'm always like this, but
they kind of accept the fact that that's who they are and start working towards
so, and it's like, I've noticed that like you have to be ready to make those changes. No one can push you. And so it's like I've noticed that through doing what I'm doing, I've inspired others to then start the work. So that for me, I find that like amazing, like humbling, like wow, like I wish like that's what I was seeking when I started, because I felt like there wasn't much I could Google like how to, you know, and it's like, oh, what's going on? And then like either read the books that you think are going to help you, like self-help books, like people like sort of like snort about it, but like they do help if you take the time to like find the ones that are good for you. And like there's a lot of like really good YouTube things out there, so it's like start small. Like don't think that you're like the routines of doing all those things that are going to help you isn't going to change your life like that. And I think a lot of people think that's what it is, you know. They're like, well, but I made the decision to get better. Yeah, but you then have to commit to it, you know what I mean? Like for me, it took like, I was joking with my sister, I was like, if someone told me it would have taken me like 4 to 5 years to like get through the shit that I went through, like I don't think I would have even started, you know. Like you're like, oh because my god, it took so
like,
long,
the
you know.
Start line to see.
Yeah,
it's like it's so
heavy.
Like,
where do I start? Where do
it's super heavy to think about.
I think with anything in life though, we have to like with anything, relationships, you have to work on it.
Yeah.
With anything, so I kind of get that, you know, putting in work on yourself is super
and accepting,
important.
Like you said, the first step is
accepting.
Like you were saying. I think a lot of people almost take their bad traits and be like put it a part of their personality.
Oh yeah,
I always
1000%.
say like, you can change this.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you even say like, oh, I'm like this, is you're never gonna
almost
change.
like proud of it.
Yeah, but it's just you're accepting it as part of your personality. Therefore, you will never change it because you've accepted. I will always be like this.
Yeah.
So you need to say like, oh, I don't want to be like this. I want to be the opposite. I want to be. You know, if you find you're too emotional and you always say I'm so emotional, well. Saying that you're gonna constantly be emotional.
Like that's a great example, because I was the prime example of someone that was like hyper emotional, and I could have just gone with that and be like, well, that's who I am. Like there was a running joke when I used to work in bars and stuff and be like, do you like always cry in the kitchen? Is that like a thing you do? Or like you know what I mean?
It's
like
my quirk.
You're like, oh, Naomi's in the back. But like then you just, it's like finding the tools that work for you, like and like understanding for me, I'm always going to be emotional, but how can I work with it and not against it, and not like just sit
like,
there.
What's making me emotional?
Yeah, exactly. And like understand how it works. Like for me, it's waves. Like I'm not going to make a decision when I'm like up here totally in the emotion. I need to wait till it goes down and then be like, okay, was I overreacting? Or like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right. And just one more question. I don't know if this has anything to do with it. So my boyfriend always tells me I'm bipolar. So I was wondering if you knew, like, if there was a reasoning behind, like, why somebody is bipolar, or somebody can see it as that, if it's actually a meaning for something else.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, there's two.
So you're bipolar.
I have two answers actually to this. One is like more astrology. One is like more just psychology. But like, you're probably not, first of all. just
well,
just
I think
saying.
it's actually a side effect of ADHD.
No, well, what I've understood is that it needs to have a root.
So I have that. So
yeah, that's why I'm saying you don't.
She just diagnosed me.
like when you think of bipolar, there's and if someone wants to be like, no, that's not what it is, but of what I understand, you need to have something that had happened to you first for it to then develop. So there has to be a trauma in your life,
me up?
Right? But so that's like the more psychology, whatever. But like, it's funny that you say that, because my sister and I have talked about it, and I'm like, am I bipolar? Yeah. Like, what's going on with me? And like, it's funny because like I've studied my chart a million times, and I always find something new. And there was this one tiny thing where the guy was like, yeah, like, I've seen the highest, it's like, it's too complicated, so I'm not going to get, but there was like the highest thing I've ever seen with that person to has this like this specific thing in their chart was bipolar. And it was like the exact same thing I had. And I was like, okay, so I'm not insane, but like it's once again, it's like I do believe that some people like 100% need to like work and like have the medication, whatever. But for me, like it was once again learning how to work with it and not against it.
Like
and,
sometimes
like,
when I know I'm acting crazy, I'm like, hey, Alessia, like calm the bitch down. Like, you're being crazy. You're being bipolar. Like I'm able to like acknowledge when I'm like, okay, I'm not aligned here.
Yeah, like for me, I had to almost and this comes back to like reading those spiritual like books that like help you with these things where it's like they teach you to literally remove yourself from the emotion and like sort of have like a seat and observe them and not be I am my emotion, like no, this is just an emotion I'm having. So it's to have that like sense of just observing it and being like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. How can how can I either counteract it, or sometimes I've noticed that now I can still feel it, but I'm not gonna put the other person that I'm dealing with in the same room, like to have to deal with it too. Yeah. You know, I know that it's a me thing and it has nothing to do, I'm not gonna project it to the other person, you know what I mean?
Interesting.
And sometimes I have to just communicate it. Like I have to just communicate, like don't get me wrong, like Aldo, like my husband, I'm like he's so patient with me, like sometimes I'm like but like it's to communicate it too, like for like especially with Aldo, it's like I tell him like this is how I'm feeling right now, like either just deal with the vibe or I'll like I literally will go into another room and just deal with it, you know what I mean? But like it's really good to have someone, like for example my ex, it was like a whole different story. He would take everything super personally and then it would create this huge fight and then we'd fight for days and it was a whole thing, and then all of a sudden I was like dealing with his feelings. So but like my husband, it's like he's just like it just sort of like rolls. He doesn't take it personally because it isn't personal, you know. Yeah, it's perfect match.
I would be so
that,
if I knew tarot reading, me and my boyfriend get in fight, I'd be like, let me check the cards. Well, babe, the death card came out. So.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about, you know, you were saying like there's almost like a cult-like thing going on and misinformation on TikTok.
Super misinformation.
Well, not specifically TikTok, but on social media.
That's what she's thinking.
Which is, I'm always thinking, my question is going to relate to TikTok.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, me too.
There's so many trends that are happening that I always see, and people are like, oh, and one of them was, for an example, is the whole Moldavite crystal. People say it's like the most powerful crystal. It really like it implies like huge change in your life. You can fact check me if it's wrong. But like people are on TikTok are like using it and like bad shit is happening and they're like freaking out, and it's like, how would you like I don't really know how I want to word this question, but just like how do you look at social media and like understand it properly? Like how do you not go to these trends, and what like advice can you give to people that see like, oh, crystals, and then they're not doing it right? Like what's your vibe on that is basically what I'm asking.
I was 1,000% impressionable when I started because you don't know, right? So you're like looking at these people and being like, oh, they must know so much more than me. So like I was like, that was before TikTok, so I was huge on just watching videos and videos on YouTube constantly, thinking, well, they know everything. I don't, right? And I've noticed the trend, not so on Instagram, funny enough. Like I find that Instagram is a little bit more chill when it comes to just wanting to build a community. But TikTok, it's very much about getting a viral video out, right? So the impact. So it's like I love seeing these like baby witch like wanting to learn and whatever, but a lot of people are talking through the lens of being an authority when they have like 6 months of experience, you know what I mean? But the person that's impressionable and wanting answers won't understand that. They won't know that this person has like no clue. And like, I don't know if you guys heard about like QAnon and stuff like that. Yeah. No? Oh my, good for you. It's like, it was the whole thing with the whole Trump conspiracy and like when they,
like conspiracy
theories. And it started with like just the whole Trump thing, but slowly it got leaked into the spiritual world. And so there's like a ton of like, I remember like right when the pandemic started, like I was watching these videos and I almost got caught in like because you're watching these people that are supposed to be, it's because how can you fact check someone that says, oh, my guides told me this? okay, like, I guess. But they were like, yeah, Oprah's evil. And like, it was insane. And I was like, where are they getting this information? So you can't fact check that. So it's like, it's really important to, once again, we'll always come back to use your intuition, but also your critical thinking. Because in the spiritual world, it's easy to sort of get lost in the like, woohoo
spiritual
things, you know,
like,
but you have to have a critical mind also, because you're like, does this feel right to me? And so the whole Moldavite thing, it's like, there's so many, I don't know, it's because like, you know how like the feeds like work with what you watch. So I get all the like videos that are against all that shit.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I get all the videos of people like,
my boyfriend died,
and I come all the way yesterday.
It's really interesting to see the like the mirror side of it, where like of my understanding, because I'm into crystals in the way that I like, they literally find me. Like, I barely ever buy crystals. They're just like, someone's like, here's a crystal.
this is basically the tarot, what you said about the tarot cards.
Yeah, it's really, so I'm not like, I won't know what this does, but if I feel called to pick it up, then it means something, like that I need to work with the energy, whatever. But of what my understanding of Moldavite, it's that apparently it's super expensive. So there's like no way that like 90% of those people that say that have Moldavite actually have an actual real crystal.
Like everybody buys like a shard, and it's like $100 for like the
but also like
piece.
Oh my God.
Let's say it's not fake. What were you thinking? Like, that's it's having the thing about TikTok, I find, is that there's a loss of sacredness, like taking things seriously and knowing that it's a sacred practice, and like not fucking with the vibes. If you know that that's gonna happen, why would you try to do it if you don't want what's gonna happen? Like, hello.
Absolutely.
Like, to me, I'm like, just don't buy it then.
I also think that, especially with TikTok, it's like we're in this vibe of like short form entertainment, and it's like you have 60 seconds to explain what something is that cannot be explained in 60 seconds. Yeah, so you're leaving out every important piece of information, and you're only keeping the impactful ones. And
the things that is going to make it blow up.
Like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, people take this, and that's why I'm like, I want to talk about it, because I feel like it's so, like, now we have all these people that are buying this crystal that has these serious powers, and you know, they're not ready for the things that are happening to them. And it's very intense, and I just think it comes from that misinformation, and it's all about like, so it's using your brain. Like, as much as you want to be spiritual,
you know what I mean? You have to have like, and those are the people like I connect the most, like on Instagram, whatever. Like, I'm not like the people I associate with, like we it's like a running joke now of the like love and light, because a lot of the people that love the like love and light and everything is cute and dandy, whatever, we call that spiritual bypassing, actually. And it's people who think that if they just sort of dive right into spirituality, then they don't have to do the work that comes with that like sort of spiritual enlightenment. So they just jump right over the darkness and they go into the love and light. And then if someone tries to call them out on it, they're going to be like, I feel so attacked, love and light. And you're like, dude, calm down with your love and light shit, you know? So like for me, I'm like, I'm a type of spiritual person that I'm like, I'm just sort of like, I call it like an eclectic, like I don't go for the aesthetic. Like I like things to look cute, but I don't do it for that. Like you know, when I got into witchcraft, it was like, oh, you need all of these things, you need this tool, na. But then eventually I started realizing that like being a witch is just being a witch. You don't need the tools. They might help you. Like tarot helps me. But ultimately you tap through the same thing that you tap when you tap into your intuition without it. You know, it's just tools. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. I love this so much. I think that a lot of people have this like misconception about spirituality, about even like witchcraft. I think what's funny is that spirituality, witchcraft, crystals are so literally like nature based.
Yeah, I know.
What's funny to me is the people that are so skeptical about something that is like you're channeling the elements of the earth, you're channeling nature. Especially witchcraft can be so misunderstood as this like hippity hippity and then you disappear. But it's like you guys are literally using elements of the earth to make like
you're literally just working with what you got
with like, whatever it may be, like, you know what I mean, like plants and this and that. Like, I just find it funny that people can take it in like this like mystical way, but it's just like when you think back to it, it's like the stars, astrology is you're saying facts, the stars, and like intuition, it's all things that are us, like real life us. Crystals physically there. So I just think that's interesting. And for anybody who got to the end of this episode and is thinking like, oh, it's still fucking bullshit, like chill.
But also
sit back a bit.
Like for me it's like I have like no interest in like debating if it's real or not, because I'm like, if you think astrology's fake, then start studying astrology and let me know. I know actually a really well-known astrologer, that's how he became an astrologer, because he wanted to debunk astrology and started studying it and was like, actually,
I decided.
I thought that was so interesting. I'm like, you're coming from a place of ignorance, like whatever.
Absolutely.
I think when a lot of people have so much to say about something, it's normally the people who are the least educated.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
They understand the least of it, so they're the most like, oh, there's so many gaps. You're like, well, if you actually look into it, there's not that many gaps.
Actually, let me take out my little notepad here.
Well, so glad.
Thank you so much for coming.
For having
this was
me.
so much
fun. That was really fun.
Where can everybody find you? What are your platforms if they want to get educated
or come see you?
Well, I'm the most active on Instagram at naomi.loud. I do have a website, naomiloud.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter. I just started that, but I do have I'm pretty much fully booked at this point when it comes to reading, so I do have a waiting list, but like I'm always super open.
I feel like that makes people want to book.
It's funny. I'm like,
wait
I have a waiting
sign me up.
Oh my God.
So you can definitely
for next year. I don't know what I'm doing, but yes, sign me up.
So you can either email me at astro@naomiloud.com or just DM me. I'm still I'm very open with anyone that DMs me.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming. And
thank you.
Maybe we'll have you on again.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, at the Chemical X Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and
don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah, love you. Whew. Amazing.
Woo!